What's up everyone, this is Chateau talking and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we'll be talking about Romancing Festival Asellus banner that brings the Mystic version of Asellus alongside Virgil, a support tank with magical attacks, and Ildon, a slash damage dealer that deals critical damage against different enemy types. Asellus herself is a master of many different things, but not the best one in all of them. Very nice that she can cover many roles and will offer many different utilities for those that have been collecting her different styles. She's the first one we'll be talking about. There are 7 different versions of Asellus in the game, and only this one is permanent. My name is Asellus, it's not limited, but all the other ones were limited. This was from White Days, this one's from an award banner, this was from a Perfector banner, this is a summer exclusive for global, and there's this one that was Halloween limited. Now, New Lord of Chateau is the current one that has the biggest status for every different one, save for Endurance. We have much higher SDR with 104% against 90s, and we have 92% agility, that's pretty high, and also 87% intelligence that beats even the summer version that was a debuff specialist. Her is not so high, she's a little fragile, and her love and charisma are also lacking. Well, this version has double arrows for SDR, 1 arrow for intelligence, so you can get the 2 most important things besides agility that's already pretty high. And she has the 15 bonuses for it. You can even farm more agility if you have her Perfector style. Well, we need intelligence for debuffs, but she does not come with debuff. We'll talk more about this later. First passive we have is called Fantasia. When she's attacked, she has a 37% chance to evade the attack completely. This is very useful in boss fights, especially if she's on front line. Evading a nuke attack can allow you to, well, not need your healer all the time. The second passive is called Mystic Power Tree. On the start of a turn and every turn, she has a 25% chance to trigger a buff to all of her status. The buff is 20% and also recovers 3 points of BP. 25% chance is not so reliable, once every 4 turns on average. It will give her a little of an advantage, especially on the agility part, if you are using her for evasion strategies, and it will also increase her damage by a lot. But the most important thing is the plus 3 BP, because we can use different skills faster. Okay, the last one is called Ezra Price, and attack increases by 30% and increases further by another 30% when you are attacking with swords. Well, she can only equip swords, so you get 60% increasing damage with just one passive. But this comes with a price, and the price, you lose 3 LP on the start of a battle as a recoil damage. Well, this is something that we need to discuss. First, because right now in the game we don't have characters with 60%, we have 55 with the past version of Polka. We are entering a new phase where characters will get much more damage, and she gets 60% by herself but by losing 3 LP. In the future, characters will be able to reach as much as this version of Asellus without punishment, and with passives with different effects as well. So she gets a punishment, but it's a little beyond what characters have been getting now, so I think this is a trade-off, right? But in the future, having only 3 LP available may hurt in different boss scenarios. But if your own character dies, it's usually the end of the strategy if you are facing very hard content. Okay, now we'll talk about skills. The first one is called Mirage Slash Kick. It's a slash and blunt attack. Yes, now Asellus can even do slash and blunt on the same time. It's critical against human. It's just a little more than normal attack, but at least you don't need to use normal attack anymore and can make her better on auto setups that I'll be explaining later. And the second skill is Ezra's Gale. That is indirect attack that deals AoE, slash and shadow this time. And B power 21. B21 is actually very on the start of the B power, but you can use this on turn 1 and turn 3, for example, or turn 2 and turn 3 for some farming scenarios, or Final Island if you want. The damage will be pretty high since she gets 60% increase in damage. Then the last one is called Ezra's Strife. That is an 11 BP coast attack. That means that you cannot use this on turn 1 and deals triple S damage, 60 power. slash and blunt again. So she has slash blunt, slash shadow, and now slash blunt, and it's critical against human. We don't face that many humans in the game so far, and after she deals damage, she enters a defensive counter stance. When she gets into defensive counter stance, it means that she will take the damage and counter. Usually when you have defense counter stance, it decreases the damage that you receive as well, but there's no indication of this here. The counter will be Azura Revenge. That is triple S, and as you can see here, it has a slash property only, does not have blunt, and a chance to instant kill enemies. And the good thing is that it will use the same rank as the own skill, so level 99 will have a very high chance of instant killing enemies by counter. This is a different setup. I can see it working on some stages for War Tower, for example, but also at the same time, being locked in turn 2 hurts a lot. In the future, she will get a different style that starts with 12, allowing her to open with this, so that you can try to instant kill your enemies on turn 1, since turn 2 may be too much. If you have Final Impress, it can mean that you can at least wait one turn, but there's another problem here. This attack doesn't have fast. Tukwai was released as a competition to this version, and Tukwai has also a triple S counter, but she opens with an AoE attack, and she has a fast attack to fix that. This time we don't have fast, but we do have very high agility. That means that, well, sometimes you may not attack before the boss, but most of the time you will. With that said, we have a good attack that comes from Zero Coast, that will do a little extra damage over normal attacks. We have Azura Gale, that's an attack that can be used for AoE, or if you want to use her, for example, on raid, you can just leave Azura Gale on 11, get Azura Strife, and she would just cycle between Mirage Slash Kick and Azura Strife. Sometimes she would just get buffs and recover BP to reuse Azura Strife faster, but she would just ignore the Azura Gale exist. That means that it's good for auto, or you can do the same for Azura Gale, just leave Azura Strife on plus 11 BP cost. With that said, this is what she offers by herself, but we need more than that to make Asellus interesting for farming. Well, first of all, we can go for her S style, like I said, is permanent. With this update, we'll get Rosario Impale Plus. That becomes a triple S attack with 61 power and has critical against Undead and Demon. It's only slash, you are losing the blunt part, but at least you can use this now on turn 1 when comparing to Azura Strife. The power is pretty similar, for example, and you can leave this on 9 and just use Mirage Slash Quick twice and then return to Rosario Impale, and this would be actually a very good cycle for, I don't know, maybe raids. And besides that, there's another good thing that you can get from her version, this one here. We have Enya Iosia. She can open with this one and do a little more damage if there's only one wave of multiple enemies. You also have access to Flash Triple Thrust that brings pierce damage if you have the Perfector style, and it's not exactly that important. I think Rosario Impale has more power for 9 BP, and she can just keep being a slash damage dealer instead of the pierce part, but this one just adds more value. If you have her Halloween style, you can also inherit Rising Nova. In the future, this attack will be double S, and you have Heat, so she has another different element to start for farming. She will be able to farm many different scenarios because of many different damage types. Now let's talk about the best inheritances. One is this version of her called Facing the Final Battle. This one has Mirage Step. This attack here is an AoE slash attack that can debuff intelligence by 15%, but it relies on your intelligence against the enemy's will. As you can see, on the original version it was only 41, but it worked for some time. But we used it a lot with her Summer style, because the Summer style starts the round debuffing enemy intelligence and then can debuff further by chance when attacking, and if you had Mirage Step, she could just keep debuffing intelligence and make a very good intelligence debuffer that could just sometimes be the only one in your party. So, this style also has a very interesting inheritance. Phantom Blade. If you want this, it has a counter mechanic. When she uses Phantom Blade, she deals S power 41 modifier. It's a fast attack, nice. She goes after one enemy and she enters a counter stance. And this one is evasive, so she does not take damage. Every time that she gets attacked, she will counter with Mirage Step. Yeah, the same attack we just saw, and we'll have a chance to debuff intelligence. Okay, so depending on the fight, you can just use this to decrease intelligence by a lot. If you have many targets, if they attack you like 3 times at least, you can decrease their intelligence by 45%. This is pretty massive, but it's a counter mechanic, but at least it just evades damage. But Mirage Step is already good enough for you to get a character to debuff intelligence. But let's say something about Asellus against characters like Zosma, for example, is another character that can use Mirage Step. He has a much higher intelligence with 100%, and he also buffs his intelligence when he attacks. Zosma beats Asellus in this completely in boss fights. Because he buffs his STR intelligence all the time, he can even nuke better after some time, but he does not have the chance to evade. Another character that can compete with Asellus is the last version of Monica. She has Blurry Needles, a 3 BP skill that debuffs intelligence. She buffs dexterity and intelligence all the time, so that her intelligence and accuracy are always high, and she will have higher and higher chance to debuff. That doesn't happen with Asellus. Sometimes you will just not be able to land debuffs because her intelligence is 87%. If you get her Mystic Power tree to trigger, you get an intelligence buff. Or if you have Pion of Peace from Metroarch all the time, you have higher intelligence, but she needs more support or more RNG than these other 2 comparisons. Can she do the job? Most of the time, but not always. Well, I am a little disappointed because I expected them to change something in Asellus, like decreasing Azure Strife to 10 or reduce the LP penalty on the start of a battle. Like I said, believe that they did this to sell her next tile in the future. This version of her will get access to even higher STR, but doesn't have a higher agility or intelligence. But this version also has an attack that can debuff intelligence. This one here, called it Plum Kagura, and instead of just debuffing 15%, it can debuff up to 20%. So you have a higher cost, but you do have higher damage and a higher debuff. So this is something that you can expect if you are missing out on Mirage Step. Will she work by herself? Yeah, she will work better as a damage dealer, but Mirage Step just gives her a hold as an intelligence debuffer too. Well, Asellus will be receiving a double S grade in our tier list, will be very high on the top, but it's not a meta character. She's not a triple S character as well, because she doesn't have anything on herself that is meta defining or that makes her so important. People can skip her and use different units and they won't feel that they are lacking something. Okay, the next character is Virgil. This guy was buffed in Global. He's now very different when compared to his JP counterpart. This guy has 92% endurance. That's pretty high. He has 77 agility, that's on average levels. His intelligence is 102%. That's pretty high for a character like him, with bonuses on both intelligence and will. That's also pretty high. His charisma is 63 and he needs this. So what exactly is Virgil? Why do he has endurance, intelligence and will, and even charisma? This guy is a magical tank with support. Well, for passives we start from the bottom. First of all, this guy has Iron Wall Defense 6. This one decreases damage by 40%. This is the same passive as we saw with Mariah. For example, Mariah has the same one. Not just Mariah, the Snow Egan Ryu also has access to. As you see, this is now the current highest decrease in damage that we can have from a passive. His second passive is Mystic Charisma. On the start of a turn, in every turn he gets 2 buffs. Guard Up decreases damage by 25%. Rally Up increases the damage that he applies by 25%. This is his only damage passive. 25% may not seem so high since he is not exactly a main damage dealer. The third effect is he will recover his HP by a very small effect. It should be around 150. The good thing is that it's on the start of a turn, so that he does not even need to attack and he heals himself before he gets attacked. And that works well with his third passive. But this is just the start. He has the third passive called Fireworks Counter. When he is directly attacked, he has a 37% chance to reduce the damage that he receives. He already has a lot of damage reduction passives. It could reduce even further. And he will counterattack with fireworks. Remember, only 37% chance. There is some RNG here. The counterattack is called fireworks. It's an attack with C power, indirect, and it's heat damage. But the damage is not the best part. The best part is that it recovers all surviving allies BP. That is very useful because we need different strategies to stack BP, since many bosses just do a lot of damage all the time. Let's say that you have Mirza in the same party as Virgil. Sometimes you'll be recovering Mirza so that Mirza can use Steel Blade Light more often. Again, Virgil is a magical attacker. I didn't say, but he uses martial arts weapons just like Apollo, just like Creator, just like Shira, but he deals damage based on his intelligence. So as just by the passives, you can see that this guy can just sustain a lot, be used as a frontal tank that takes damage, reduces it to a very low level, and sometimes when being directly attacked, will recover everyone's BP and do damage. That is his central role. But to understand him better, we need to see the skills. The first one is called Sunspot. With 3 BP, he can do a single target attack with double elements. That means Shadow and Heat. This is the same elements as Barthélemy, and they work pretty well together. And there is something very important here. When he attacks with this is very strong for the coast. He also gives himself a down stance that carries medium effect and lasts for 4 turns. This is the same value as we have for the character we just mentioned, Mirza. Mirza carries the same down to buff on his Steel Blade Light, a 10 BP skill, see medium effect. We do notice that he gets more attack in boss fights after he uses Steel Blade Light. I don't know the exact percentages that Daunt increases, especially when it's medium, but it really changes the chance of being attacked. So if you are using him on a Desert Lens X formation, you can just open the fight, use the Sunspot, draw more enemy attacks to counter more often. Now, the second skill is called Morion. This one is an AoE attack with Shadow and Cold this time. It's nothing special, it's just damage. With 5 EP means that you can use it 3 times in a row if you want to farm with this guy. He's not exactly a good farmer, to be honest. But if you're lacking, he works. Then the third skill is Restrained Flare. This one is a 10 BP attack with triple S damage, Shadow and Heat again. So like I said, he combos well with other characters like Barthélemy. And this one has a medium chance to inflict Paralyze. It's only single target, it's a nuke attack, but with 102% intelligence, he will probably land paralyzing most enemies that don't have any resistance. Only against some bosses that he may have some difficulty. We have Shadow Chains, an attack that has high chance to inflict paralyze, so it could have helped to have high chance here too, since the cost is pretty high. But there is one good thing. Let's say that you place Virgil in the front line, especially on the Desert Lens X formation like I said. You use Sunspot right on start, get more attack. You trigger your plus BP. It triggers for himself too, so when you are on overdrive, you just use Restrained Flare to contribute with damage. And then you are back to Sunspot, and if you want to save BP here and there, just attack normally. And then you will be able to nuke again. So he can help do damage. Sadly, he's locked with only morale up passive. In the future, with weapons that have better damage passives, he would not fall behind so much, but even his triple S damage won't do that much in boss fights. But since he's a support unit, many support units barely do damage, and he contributes much better than some other ones like Mariah. Mariah cannot even hit the enemy with damage. One last problem that he has is that he gets guarded by himself, so if you use him together with Golden Ball, for example, they won't work so well together. You are giving a better guard up, of course, but it just means that this passive is useless. And another thing, in JP there's another version of Virgil in the future. This one has access to Firework as his active skill, so that you can use it even without having to be countered. There's also some row attacks here, and he can do more damage, but he's not as good as a tank. So in the end, Virgil is a very different support tank that can help with BP cycles especially on hard fights. Is Virgil meta? I dare to say. I don't know that much. I want to summon exactly the character that I want the most from this banner, but characters like Mariah are more important than Virgil. And we already have other ones like Halloween Princess White Rose or Golden Ball that offer very specific utilities. But Virgil may work better, especially in the segments like I said, where you're facing many enemies with direct attacks or against a boss that attack multiple times with direct attacks. So he's also receiving a double S grade and will be high on the tier list. The last character is Ildon. This guy has a Nest style in the event, so you do have some inheritance options. He comes with 101% STR and plus 12 and 90% agility with plus 16. He has a focus on those two styles, so that's pretty good. His dexterity is much higher than Asellus, and his endurance and will are just as bad, so they are both fragile characters. His love and charisma are also pretty bad, with intelligence being on 84, and he can use this in the future. As for passives, the first one is called High Lethal Tension. This was changed for global, it's much better than it was in JP. He gets 20% increase in damage at all times, but also 30% further if he lands a critical attack. And let me tell you, Ildon is a critical attack specialist that we haven't seen for a while. Then the second one is called Mystic Power Tree. On the start of a turn, he has a medium chance, that is 25% chance, to trigger a buff to all of his status by 20% and also recover BP by 3. That is the same one as Asellus as well. They are mystics, so they have the same passive. The last one is Hyper Overtension. He gets 20% increase in damage at all time, then 35% on combo and 50% on overdrive. So this guy will do very good damage on overdrive, and he has 40% at all times alongside 70% on overdrive. Especially if he gets to trigger his buffs, he will do even better. For our skills, we have Raven's Raid. The first one is only 3 BP and will deal slash and pierce damage, and hits 2 times with E power and 6 modifier. This is essentially a normal attack, but twice. Double normal attack will hit for like 8 power damage easily. So for the coast, this is already amazing. There is one character that has a similar attack, and that is this version of Leonid, the last one, with Black Pearl. It's actually the same thing, but with different weapon and elements. So Leonid doesn't have such a good passives, but now Ildon does. So for raids and for constant damage, he is pretty strong. Another thing is that enemies that are undead are usually weak to blunt or pierce. Pierce will do weak damage and also critical. And some of the demons are also weak to slash, so they will be hit by weak and also critical, allowing him to do even more damage. Then the second one is called Phantom Raven. This one is again slash and pierce, and it's an AoE attack, but it's direct. So for 6 BP we have D power 13 modifier, and it has a chance to inflict paralyze. It's low chance, but his intelligence is not bad, 84% exactly, okay for a damage dealer, and deals critical damage to undead and demon again. AoE paralyze with only 6 BP is the lowest amount that we have in the game right now. Although he's not a mage, if you get him to trigger his passive right on the start, he will help especially on tower or very specific stages or challenges where you need paralyze on turn 1. Because it's low, you may need to just get a buffer sometimes to allow him to paralyze. But just because it has damage, 2 elements, critical and also paralyze, it's a very good skill. Then the last one is Rosario Impale Plus. That comes from an Amplify. I showed that on the Asellus review, and he comes with that amplified already. It's a triple S attack, 61 modifier, only 9 BP coast. That's nice because he can use this every 3 turns, but does not allow him to use this in a 3-turn cycle for 2 times, unless he trigger Mystic Power. So for farming, he will go for Rosario Impale, and after that he just goes for Raven's Raid. But that's pretty cool because he can just keep using Heaven's Raid, and it's just very good damage. Like 3 Heaven Raids is much stronger than just 1 Rosario Impale. You can't be sure of that. So it's just an opener, and then just stick to using Heaven's Raid. Or you can just use him for Phantom Raven, just get Rosario Impale to +10, and he will be able to use this twice, but not 3 times, unless Mystic Power triggers. So he's a little locked on this. It can be fixed in the future. But for now, we need to talk about his inheritance options. Like, we have Tornado Blade Plus. Yeah, he allows Tornado Blade to be amplified with his update. This attack is insane. Okay, it's 13 VP, that means that he can only use this on turn 2. Okay, but it's slash damage. Okay, double S power. Whoa, double S power with an AoE attack. That's nuts. 48 modifier. Critical damage against flowing enemies. There's something here. There are some avian enemies that are weak to slash, especially SaGa Frontier 2 birds and bosses. But some of them are only weak to pierce. So even if they are not weak to slash, we'll still hit them by critical damage that already adds 20% increase in damage. And now he'll get even more because he has the second part of the high lethal tension that adds a plus 30%. So Ildon will be killing many enemies on the second wave. Because his agility is pretty high, you can place him on the front line of Amazon Raid X formation. Kill the first wave with a fast attacker and Ildon will just destroy the second wave. The only problem is that he does not have another AoE to follow up on turn 3. But if he destroys a very powerful wave, that's already a job done. He also has this Inheritance Dragon's Lair. That's an attack that comes from Mirza. It's 8 PP, double S power, and it's critical against Dragon. It will actually do very good damage against Dragon because of his passive, especially if the Dragon is weak to slash. There are some dragons that are, especially if they come from SaGa Frontier 2. And there is also Attack and Defend. This comes from Julian and gives him a 25% decrease in damage by Guard Up Medium. Lasts for 2 turns. I don't think this is useful at all for him. He's a damage dealer, not a tank or anything. So if you want Guard Up, you should bring by other characters. Now for his cycles, one last thing. We can start with Rosario Impale. Increase Phantom Raven to 8. Because if he triggers Mystic Power, he might try to use that attack instead of Heaven's Raid. So you just stick to Heaven's Raid, and if you get Mystic Power to trigger, once in a while you'll be able to use Rosario Impale again. If you want to use AoE, you can use Phantom Raven twice, but the third time will depend on him having access to Mystic Power or not. Or you can go for turn 2 damage by use of Tornado Blade Plus, and then Heaven's Raid in the third turn. Or the last thing, you can inherit Dragon's Lair on turn 1, and then you can attack again on turn 3. But that's only if you are facing dragons. Now, I want to check JP as well because there is a future style of Ildon. This future style of him has higher damage, as you can see, higher agility, similar intelligence, and this version gives him access to Mirage Step Plus. The same attack we discussed when talking about Asellus. She will also be able to amplify this, reducing it to only 3 BP cost. So, you can just overwrite Raven's Raid if you want, and he will keep using it. Or you can use the new style with that Mirage Step, depending on the scenarios, that other one will be better. But just to explain that Ildon has a future as a damage dealer and also as an intelligence debuffer. His intelligence is not so bad, but once again, he does not beat Zosma, he does not beat the newest version of Monica, okay? So Ildon is pretty powerful right now. He has good damage passives, but he competes with a lot of slash damage dealers. If you still feel comfortable with your slash damage dealers, you don't really need to go for Ildon, but he still offers spears, especially with this Raven Raid attack that will be good for boss fights or raids, and he offers a lot of different farming cycles, and in the future he can become your intelligence buffer if you miss it out on Zosma or on Monica, or you don't have Mirage Step with your Asellus. That said, he will also deserve a double S grade, kinda on the middle, but on the high middle on for tier list. Now the important question comes, is it worth summoning here? I have to tell you that this is a difficult question. I'll be giving this a silver award, it's not a gold award, but there is one good thing. All 3 styles are good in different ways. Virgil will be very good for those that want more strategies to face hard challenges, but he's not as important as Mariah, I have to tell you that. If you don't have gems, you still got Mariah, you should be happy. You can kinda skip Virgil. You can probably use different strategies where Virgil applies. And Ildon is a very powerful attacker. He is even better if you're thinking about doing bolt slash and pierce. We just got Young Boy, that's a very powerful character for raids, but Ildon competes. He even goes for double elements. In Asellus, if you have her summer or award style, you now have a lot of utility, so there is value on this banner. There is, I cannot say there's not, and all three characters are useful in a way or another, so the chances are getting them are good, but there's still chance of an off banner like most banners, so proceed with caution, okay? If you have the gens, you love the characters, pull, it's okay, it's not a bad banner at all to pull, okay? Thanks so much for watching this video. These are my opinions. What is yours? Please say here in the comments. Don't forget to join our Discord server where we talk about romancing SaGa in the universe, and you can find the link on the description of the video. I hope to see you soon on the next one. Bye.